It's really easy for human beings to turn inward when we face moments of heartbreak and sorrow and pain. It is natural for us to break away from people and shut down, to essentially implode. But for some, something extraordinary and supernatural happens, and instead of imploding, some individuals gravitate to faith and turn to God. This week, for the July edition of Author Awareness, I get the joy of interviewing an author who was directed by God to use her experiences to write books about working through the aftermath of sexual assault through a biblical lens. I'm your host, Garrett K. Jones, and I'm interviewing Utah-based Christian author Emily Bernath. Happy Saturday and welcome to my channel. If you're new, glad to have you, and if you're a returning viewer, glad to have you back. You can become a channel supporter through Patreon and the merch store. Both are linked down in the video description, and of course I'll talk more about those options towards the end of this video. Of course, the fastest, the easiest, and the most free way to support what we do here is by becoming a subscriber, so make sure to click the subscribe button, smash that like button, and hit the bell for notifications on new content. Two things coming up over the next couple of weeks. First up, I'm going to be presenting the Author Showcase to help promote Author Awareness August. Each author that I will be interviewing will be listed along with the dates for those videos, so be on the lookout for that video. Second, which comes up on the same day, July 30th, that's the date that I will be doing my lecture at the Kings County Library. I will be live streaming that event on Instagram starting at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Keep up on the notifications for that through Instagram and Twitter. Before going any further with the video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon for notifications on new videos. You can select notifications for all videos, or you can select notifications based on your preferences. If you're watching on your phone, be sure to update those settings inside the app itself to get the most out of your viewing experience. So I connected with this month's author back in 2021 through Instagram. Given her experiences and the content she wrote, I felt it would be a great fit for an interview because what she has to say is powerful for so many women. Please be advised that some of what is shared in this interview may be challenging or difficult for some viewers. All right, so Emily, thank you for joining me. Please tell me about your work and what you write.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So about me, the books I write are devotionals. So they're faith-based. And really the heart behind my writing is in John 8:32 that says, when we know the truth will set us free. So each of my books are kind of exploring what is the truth, and when I know it, what freedom do I gain from this, right? Like, there's a lack of freedom in this world, to put in, in other words. So yeah, that's where my desire is in my writing. Yeah, I write a little bit about my own story as well.
So how did you come into writing? What drew you to writing devotionals?
Well, my original intent for writing my books is to lead a small group at the church I go to. So yeah, I was approached one day by some people, and they're like, all right, Emily, dream up this group. What does it look like? And, kind of the who, what, when, where, why, the logistics of it. And part of that is what the group is going to cover when they meet. And so I was just like, all right, I know what I want to talk about. And if I want to talk about it, then I need to start writing it down so that we can cover it. Right. So
yeah,
that's kind of where it all started. It was just a bunch of lessons and curriculum for this group I wanted to start. And turned into a lot more than that.
And which church are you a part of?
I just go to a non-denominational church here in Salt Lake City. Yeah.
Very cool. You think most people think Salt Lake City, and they don't think non-denominational churches. There's a very specific organization that is very
Yeah.
key in the city.
Well, I was born and raised in Ohio. Go Buckeyes. I'm not from Utah.
Yeah. So how did you get it into writing? I mean, you talked about this was you felt kind of inspired to do this through what you were doing with your small group. But was being a writer something that you've always wanted to do, or was this something that you kind of just kept gravitating towards as
Neither. Neither. Yeah. So I was the math nerd growing up. I did flashcards for fun. I played math computer games for fun. That was my definition of a good time. I hated books. I hated writing everything about them. And yeah, never saw myself becoming an author. I got my degrees in chemistry, got a bachelor's degree in chemistry and a master's degree in business. So,
and so this was more of a calling of God putting on your heart to essentially write this curriculum so that other people can learn from it and draw closer to Him.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's kind of neat when ministry just kind of calls you. I get that feeling. Believe me, I've been fighting the idea of being a teacher for a number of years.
That's awesome.
I've got a background in youth ministry.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I've been a youth leader this is my 6th year now. So
I got my seminary degree through Liberty University several years ago, and then I kept wanting to get back into youth ministry, and I kept thinking this had to be vocational. It had to be in a church, and then. For me, it was very different than what I expected, but I'm loving every minute of it. And I've only been 2 weeks into this position, but it's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I get to kind of marry my passion for God and my passion for being a writer.
That's very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of inspirations do you draw from?
For me, it's God's word. And even. So my second book, Broken Lenses Volume 2, released in June. And when I was kind of going through, okay, what chapters, the topics for each chapter, really book 2 is about how do I see others as God sees them? And well, how do I figure out what chapters to include unless I know how God sees other people, right? And where do I learn that? I learned that from His word. So I just...
It kind of sounds like, without even meaning to, you're pulling from Mark 12, 29 through 31, where Jesus is talking about the greatest commandment: love God with everything you are and love people as yourself. Which,
yes,
for me, and this is what I've been inserting with my classroom because I'm where I'm teaching. It's love God, love people, serve the world. So. It sounds very cool that you're kind of that in your way you're boiling those essences down to what you're writing.
Yeah, and I don't claim the topics in my books to be rocket science. These are all things that we've heard of and are familiar with. And there's a chapter on acceptance, a chapter on belonging, respect. Being seen. How do I just see the people around me? That they feel noticed, right? Like that. People underestimate the power of being seen.
Exactly.
And it's really a lot more simple than we make it out to be. And these are things we all want. We all want to be accepted. We all want to have a place of belonging. So why don't we show it? Right? Like it just.
Well, absolutely. You can't begin to help someone or even talk to them about faith matters unless you're willing to understand what their need is and be able to try and meet that need.
Right.
And that's one of the simplest ways to go about connecting with people, and you see that through the Gospels. Jesus is sitting down to talk with people, and it starts with meeting a need. The feeding of the 5,000 people were hungry. They weren't willing to listen to anything He had to say until they had been fed.
Yeah.
So that's where His heart was coming from, and obviously that seems to be something that is intrinsic to what you're writing here.
Yeah.
I was wondering if there's something from the first 2 books that you've put in there that you've been able to kind of go back and look at and still be able to draw something from or learn something from.
Oh, absolutely. I don't write my books with the mindset that I think I'm like the biggest expert in these topics, right? I'm just as human as anyone else. So I mean, yeah. And for me, it translates a lot into advocacy work too. So I'm an advocate for sexual assault survivors. And, a lot of what you were just saying a little bit ago to me was ringing true, just even from an advocacy point. Like, survivors, they want to be seen, they want to be believed, and that someone is there to walk with them. And, yeah, so that's, for me, that's where I apply a lot of this in that sort of that work. And God's made it pretty clear to me that those are people I'm supposed to be a light to. And so,
was there a particular lesson from the book so far that just constantly is on your mind?
The biggest one from an advocacy perspective, I think, is just showing respect, like respecting what people's boundaries are, respecting, that they have value. Like that's really the whole boils down into the book, is that we can't see others as God sees them unless we see them as having value. So what does it mean to show value and to see a person as having value, and that it's not my job to be the judge of their value, right? Like, I don't know. I think our world just loves to put on these, filters and, requirements that we have to do X, Y, Z, whatever, in order to find this intrinsic worth. And that's total BS.
Over the last,
it's BS.
Yeah, especially, I mean, like the last 18 months, it's like you don't have value unless you have, X number of million of followers on social media or YouTube. And
right.
unless you've got that little blue check mark, you don't mean much of anything. And it's like, no, people mean more than that. What has been probably I'd say the hardest part or the biggest challenge in developing your writing and working on these particular books that you've developed?
The biggest challenge originally was seeing myself as someone that could even do this. Like, I had to completely rewire my brain for how I saw myself, right? Because in my mind, I was Emily, I was the scientist, I'm I'm all these things, but I'm not a writer. Like, I struggle with that all the time. I'm like, why me, God? What the heck? Like, I don't understand. Like, can't someone else do this that like clearly loves, just had this passion for writing their whole life? That was never, I hated books growing up. Sometimes I still do. It's a constant work in progress that God is healing me in that regard on, my view for books and reading. But that's a challenge, is like, because I think we all have this way that, I don't know, we give ourselves an identity, but really our true identity comes from God and God alone. And so it's having to be willing to sacrifice who I thought I was to be who God made me to be. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So that was a challenge. And sometimes I don't always think he's right, So,
well, that seems to be a common theme throughout history. God, you're not right. Don't prove us wrong.
Oh wait, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was able to get into that set of like, I do have something to say, and if God is calling me to do it, then failure is not an option, right? Then the creation can happen from there. Yeah.
Now, it's been my experience in looking at devotionals that some authors will insert part of their testimony into the text of what they're writing. Is that something that you've done with these particular books?
I have, but that was not something I wanted to do originally. Interesting you ask. Yeah.
It's a very personal topic to bring up.
Yeah, it is.
It's vulnerability and its exposure.
Well, when I first wrote the first draft of my first book, and I was like, all right, I'm done. I don't know what to do next. I was kind of in this limbo phase, and I got introduced to a writing coach, and pretty much the first piece of feedback she gave me was like, you have to write your story in here, Emily. And I'm like, well, why? Like, I don't want it to be about me. This isn't about me, right? It sounds so selfless. It's like, but it's not. It's like not. It's just an unwillingness to be. Yeah, exactly.
Cop out.
Yeah, exactly. Dang it! Why you call me out like that? No, you're right. So, I realized that my writing coach knows more about books than I do. So I listened and included my story. But yeah, it's important to know that you've been there and give people something to relate to, and that you're not just, preaching to them just because, I don't know. People don't want to be told to do things. They're pretty reluctant.
They really appreciate, well, it goes back to something I've encountered with regards to servant leadership. Far too often, we have pastors or we have theologians who seem like they've got it all figured out. And then, you take the guy from Hillside Church and you see what happened with him. And, he built this great following and then completely messed around behind his wife's back. And it's like, well, he clearly didn't have it figured out, but he had been preaching as if he had. Whereas you look at someone like Reverend Billy Graham, who, may have started off not the best person, but grew into this man of God who followed his heart as clearly as he could, without inserting his own agenda or deviating from the tenets of Scripture. It's important, I think, especially when you're dealing with these kinds of things, to have your own testimony thrown in there, not because you are the expert, but because you've been where people might be as they're reading that text, and it helps them identify that you're not alone in this.
Right.
We're coming up to the final question here. If you could give any advice to other would-be authors out there, whether they are fiction authors, they're writing personal narrative, or if they're like you, they're writing some kind of curriculum, what advice would you offer them?
Your story is worth telling. Don't try to let the world convince you otherwise. I don't know. What advice did I need to hear? That everything's going to be okay? Writing a book is a lot harder than people make it out to be. It can be a very emotional process, and it's okay to feel those feelings and go deeper. And people they want something to relate to. There's so many people out there that, even coming from a survivor's standpoint, there's, how many millions of survivors out there that need to know that they're seen. And, there's that we each play a part in reaching out to the people around us. And, I don't know, just don't let other people try to tell you what, is and isn't valuable. It's not their job to determine.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if you don't see yourself as an author, that's okay, because I didn't either.
I think that's an excellent piece of advice. And I think touching on something that you said a little bit ago, it's important that if you do have a writing coach or someone who's guiding you through the process, that you listen to what they have to say, because they have a little bit more experience in the field and can help you make it as good as they possibly can.
Yeah, but you also don't let people write the book for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Emily, where can people find your book? How many books do you currently have out? And because I know you've mentioned that there's 2 so far.
Yep.
You're working on a 3rd.
Yeah.
Which ones are out, and how can people get a hold of your books?
Yeah. So Broken Lenses and Broken Lenses Volume 2 are both out. And you can find them anywhere books are sold. You can go to my website, emilybernathauthor.com. They're also available Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever your favorite bookstore is.
And these devotionals, are they guided for a specific demographic, or are they just for general purpose devotional time?
I think people get more value out of it if they go through it with other people. I mean, you can do it on your own as well, but my personal passion is in women's ministry, but I think men have read my books and gotten something out of it too. I think it's, everybody needs to know that they're seen and loved, right? So,
absolutely.
But for me, that's what I tend to do is, women's ministry mostly.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Emily. I do appreciate you coming on the show and talking a little bit about your work. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
A big thank you goes out to Emily for her participation in this month's Author Awareness interview. Now, if you're interested in picking up copies of her work or connecting with her through social media, Those links are available down in the video description. Hey, thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe. If you'd like to support this channel, you can do so on Patreon through one of 3 affordable support plans. Patrons get access to blooper reels, behind-the-scenes videos, and so much more. You can also buy sweet merch from my store on Teespring, which you can then turn around and rep on Instagram and Twitter by tagging me at GKJ_publishing and using the hashtag 5kingdomsmerch. Or you can sign up for the free poster giveaway. All links are featured down in the video description, and I will announce a winner for the poster when I hit 200 YouTube subscribers. Please make sure to tune in next week for the July edition of Creator's Corner as I close out the discussion on the hero's journey. The vlog of the 5 Kingdoms is filmed without the use of a live audience at Skyrocket Studios in Hanford, California. We can't do what we do without your help, so please make sure to subscribe by clicking the button that's above my head, and make sure to watch and share the videos over here to my left. Have a great week.